Hello, my name is Rickard, and in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to put together this book cover in Photoshop. This is a book cover that was recently sent to me by a member of the Nucly Academy, and he asked that I put together a tutorial on how I would create a cover in this style. Now, I haven't done this yet, so there's going to be a little bit of tool exploration in this tutorial. I've downloaded a few images that I'm going to need, but beyond that, we're going to go ahead and just start from the start. I'll explore various methods, and by the end of it, I want to recreate this cover, or at least get a very close approximation of it so that you understand the steps that you would need to create something in this style. Now, by the end of it, I will include all the assets that I do end up using in a link in the description of this video. So by the time this is uploaded, all those assets will be in the link. So let's go ahead, open the file in Photoshop and see how we can recreate this cover using the tools inside of Photoshop. Let's go ahead here. I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to make this 2000 pixels by 3190, which matches our cover here. And then I'm going to go up here and go to Arrange and go ahead and put this 2 up. So we've got both of our images here. And what we're going to do is work to basically recreate this. So first, let's start with our kind of White House background. So I'm going to go here, go Place Embedded. And inside the assets here, I downloaded an image from Unsplash. And this is just an image that I could find that looks somewhat similar. So I'm going to go ahead and place this in about the same location here. So right about there. And that looks pretty good. I will need to extend this out to the left. So I'm just going to take this here like so, and then do a generative fill. We'll go ahead and hit agree there. And here I just want to extend this out. Now I'm not extending it down because we're going to create this reflection effect instead. And this one looks good. So let's go ahead and we'll merge these two. So I've got that as a starting point. And then the other thing I'm going to do here now is take this here, do Command J to make a copy, Command T to transform, hold down Shift, and then just kind of turn this into a reflection. So something like this. And then I'll go ahead and with my gradient, I'm going to set this to classic gradient, make it go from foreground color to transparent. And then here I'll hold down my option, copy the sky color, and just extend that out like so. All right, so that's my water. Now I want to give it a little bit of a wave effect. So to do that, let's go to Filter, Blur. We'll first just add a motion blur to it. I want to make sure the angle is 0 here, something like that. And then we can try using our distort wave. See if we can give it a bit of a ripple effect. Now, found that with the ripple effect, it's a little hard to control because you only have this tiny preview. But we know that we primarily want the effect to be horizontal, not vertical. So let's change this to 0 or to 1, I guess. And then maybe turn up the generators. Now, even here, the effect is just too strong. So let's take even the horizontal and make that effect way less strong. So maybe something like this. And not really liking that. So I'm going to Command Z. Let's see if there's another tool we can use instead. Maybe I'll go to the filter gallery and go down to distort. And let's try Ocean Ripple. It's a slightly cooler effect. Let's try glass. And here we have a few options. So we could try blocks. Nope. Canvas. Nope. Frosted. No. None of these are great, to be honest. Now we could load a texture. So that gives us a little bit of an interesting option here. So I guess we'd have to create it first. So let's cancel out of this and see if that could be our ticket. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer here. Default my colors to black and white. Go to filter, render. And first I'll just start with clouds. This is just creating some texture that I can manipulate. Then I'm going to do Command J to make a copy of that and go to render. And I want to try fibers. And I think you can probably see where I'm going with this, but we'll hit OK. I'm going to do Command T for transform. Turn this so it's more the direction of the waves, but I want them about like this. So maybe we'll make a copy of this. Hold down Option. That looks pretty good. And I'll merge those two and then do a filter. Let's do first a motion blur. Kind of get rid of a little bit of that. So something like this. And I don't know that I need this anymore. Maybe I could add, by just decreasing the opacity here, just a little bit of that modulation from the bottom layer. All right, so we'll do that, and then let's go ahead and save a copy of this. And we're going to get rid of the layers, and then we'll just call this our water texture. And let's try this out. Hit save. Then let's go back on this layer, go back to our filter gallery. Let's go back to distort glass, and then here we'll go ahead and load that as our texture. Ooh, that's pretty cool. And I could probably mess with it more, but honestly, I'm kind of liking this effect. It looks like water. And for the purposes of this book cover, I think that's perfectly fine. So let's leave that there. And then you can see that there is a gradient here at the bottom, making the bottom of our image darker. So let's go ahead and add that. I'll just add one more layer here, go onto my gradient tool. I already have black as my foreground color. So I can just kind of extend this up like so, and maybe make it come in from the sides a little bit stronger. So something like that. Let's go ahead and add a gradient map at the very top of our layer stack here. And what I want to do with this is I want to make it go from a very dark brown color to this yellow color. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the gradient. That way, as I go to edit my gradient, I'm not selecting just the white of the mask. So we'll go in here, click on this, and here I can just sample this darkest color in this image here. Actually, apparently I can't because it's not in the same layer. So we'll have to eyeball it a bit. That's okay. I mean, otherwise I could create the mask in there, but or the gradient in there, but I think we can just eyeball this, to be honest. Something like that. I think it needs to be a little bit more orange in here, so let's just go in here, make it a little more orange. Okay, so that's starting to get that same effect. Let's hit OK. Let's go ahead and put this back here. All right, so we're starting to get a pretty nice background there. The next thing we're going to do is add our main character. So let's go File, Place Embedded, and I've got this generated image. And let's go ahead and just scale this so that it kind of matches the scaling of our image on the right. So there to about there. I'm also going to flip it can do that here so that he's facing the same way. So something around like this. Okay, and then I want to get rid of the white. So I think we can just remove background here. A little tip on the removing background. If you go to your settings to image processing, make sure that this select subject and remove background is on cloud. That'll just get you better results when you use this. And there you go. That looks pretty good. There is a bit of an issue on the hair. So I'm going to select the mask, right mouse click, and go to select and mask. And then with our edge tool, I'll just paint the edge of his hair there. And also right here between his fingers. That looks good. Let's hit OK. And then if we option click on the mask, we can see that there's a little part here that should not be unselected. So we can just do option delete, fill that with white. Okay, so we have our character now. The thing I want to do on him is I want to give him this kind of cyan coloring. So again, we're going to do that with a gradient map. Let's go ahead and add our gradient map. And I want this to be clipped just to the layer. So if I clip it like so, it'll apply just to this layer. And then in here, we can switch our black and white. And then for our white color, we're going to use kind of a cyan color there. And maybe not so saturated. So something like this. I also feel like we need to get a little more detail into our character here. So let's add a curve layer underneath. And you can see most of the information is in our black. So just need to increase the lightness of this a little bit here. So something like this. There you go. All right, then we're going to add our plane in here. So let's do File, Place Embedded, and I've got another image here from ChatGPT. And let's size this so that it's about right for this image. So something probably around there. And I want to extend this, so we'll just use Photoshop for that. It should do a relatively good job. So I'll select this and notice that I've selected it in a bit. I'll invert my selection and then do a generative fill. Voila. Kind of like this one. Let's merge these two together. And then I'm going to put this on screen. And I'll also clip it so that it's just on our character layer here, like so. And then also color-wise, it's a little too blue. This one has more of a kind of almost of a teal look. So let's do Command M to bring up our curve. I'll make that a little greener. So something like this. And then maybe in my RGB, I'll also just bring up the lights a bit. Not too much, but something like that. Okay, and then I'm going to add a mask to this layer. I need his head to be a little darker. I'll just use a gradient here and mask out the top. So something like that. All right, we're starting to get pretty close to our source there. If anything, he probably needs to move a little to the left. So something like that. And then the other thing is we have in the foreground here this these embers. Now, in my Nucly library, I do have some embers. So let's see if I have those here. Do I have them here? Well, I have flames, but do I have embers? Yes. Okay, let's grab this one here, and I'll add this to our assets as well so that you guys have access to it. And I'll put this on screen, and then we'll flip it horizontal like so that it's coming from the same location here. Something like this. Okay, and then the other thing that's quite apparent in this image is that there's a lot of grunge and texture placed on top of the whole thing. So for that, I'm going to use some of my grunge textures. Again, whichever one I use here, I'll put into the assets as well. And let's start with this one here. And we're going to set this to overlay and then take down the opacity quite a bit. And then I am noticing that there's even stronger texture back there. So maybe we'll take another one like this. And anytime you're using an overlay, you kind of want to make sure that the gray is the center, right? So this thing right here should be in the middle of your histogram. And if we move where it crosses with the center, this diagonal line, you'll basically push that into the center. So right about there. And then we can put this on overlay. And that's looking better. Let's take the opacity down on that. I'm going to hold down Option and put another copy of this behind here so that the texture is stronger in the background, but probably not that strong. Maybe around 50 there, and then 50 here as well. Okay, so starting to get there. He's probably a little too blue, so let's go to our gradient map here. I'm going to take that down. Oh, and that's also getting a little more detail in our image, which is nice. Something like that. And I'm also just going to add a hue saturation, just kind of take down the saturation here on him. And then probably also just take the saturation down on this airplane a little bit as well. Okay, so that's pretty good. I do like the kind of lighter, the lightness that's behind him here. So I'm going to do that by just kind of adding, oops, put this on normal here. Just adding a little bit of a light vignette behind him. So something like this. And if we put this below our gradient map, we can just make it white. So something like this. And then we're going to use our mask properties to feather the hell out of this. And then take the opacity down on it as well. And having done that, I think our texture is a little too strong. So let's turn one of those off. Okay, so now I want to add some titling. So let's go ahead and go onto our type tool. I'm going to add the titling right at the top here. Now, this font to me looks like Techo. So that's the one I'll use. It may not be exactly the same, but certainly very close. So we'll go a Joe Johnson Thriller. And then if I select all, I can adjust the size of that. Also adjust our kerning here. Move that up a bit to about there. Now this has a bit of a drop shadow, and also there's a bit of a gradient behind it. Let's go ahead and add the gradient. I'm going to go to this layer here, and with a black gradient, kind of just go up here and add a little bit of darkness behind those letters there, like that. And then on my text layer, I'll also just add a drop shadow. And let's reset this to default. Okay, and then I'm going to hold down Option, make a copy of this to down here, and we'll add the author name. And go ahead and make that about the same size. Does that look about the same size? Yeah, I think so. All right, and then for the black C, let's Option, make a copy again, and we'll do the make that a bit bigger. And at this point, I kind of need some guides, so I'm just going to use my Nucly action for making guides. Actually, seeing that I don't have them loaded, I will not use that. I'm just going to go to guides here, new guide layout. We'll go ahead and reset this to default. I'm going to make 2 columns. That'll give me my center line. And then I'll also just go ahead and add a couple rows so I have a center there as well. So something like that. Now we can center up our the. Hold down Option. Let's make a copy of this, and we'll do black C. Well, it's pretty dead on there. Techo is definitely the right font. So we'll do that. We'll change our leading here. We'll do some minor tweaks on our kerning there. So kind of want that A in the dead center. That looks good. Move this down a little bit. And then I think if I take all of them, I kind of want to move this up just a little so we're seeing our whole plane accident down here. Okay, now I'm going to give some effects to this. So we already have some. I could look at my Nucly styles for this. Let's see if I have them loaded. Yeah, Nucly titling styles. So this is kind of where I would start. Try out some of these. That one's got kind of the right idea on the bevel. Let's go in here and check out. I don't need the gradient overlays. This looks like it has a bit of color. So maybe just one of the gradient overlays. Also, let's look at what kind of pattern it has. No, we don't need the pattern. And let's put this on normal. And it looks like almost like a coppery color that then goes to a white color. So something like that. For the stroke, I don't think we need. We could do a stroke that's similar in that color. So let's go to color. I'll just reset to default first. Maybe this same kind of off-whitish color. And let's go ahead and make this a few more pixels. So I would say 6 pixels should be good. And then for the bevel and emboss, I want this to be a stroke emboss. And I want this to have maybe this one here. Let's go ahead and make this the same size as our stroke. And right now it's a smooth. We can try chisel hard, chisel soft, see if either or one of those look better. And then we're going to turn off the global light, kind of move this around until we're getting these kind of same highlights that we're seeing on our reference here. So let's move this around. I'm also going to turn the screen way up and put it on linear dodge. And then for the multiply, I probably want to make this like not quite black, but a little bit of a off red there. So something like this. And this, I'm just going to play with these settings until I'm getting something that looks closer to this. So I kind of like the highlights that I'm getting here. But to separate the bevel, maybe I'll do a inner glow and put this on multiply. I just want a little separation from the bevel edge there. So something like that I think looks good. And let's try a different one of these. Okay. For now, I'm happy with that. Let's zoom out. I'm going to take all these effects, copy them onto this layer. And this here, this kind of jagged edge there, that comes from the chisel. So let's try chisel hard, see if it gets rid of it. We could also go back to smooth and just make the depth of it stronger. That'll increase the kind of strength of that effect. And I feel like also on this, we can maybe increase the size to 8 because these letters are bigger, and also increase this to 8. So something like that. All right. Let's turn off our guides. So pretty close. And obviously, you know, we don't have the same starting image or anything like that. But hopefully there you can see kind of the steps that I would take to get this kind of a book cover design. Now, as a final step looking at this, I'm a little bothered by this hand interfering with the image of my plane. So to fix that, I would go in here, just add another layer, maybe add with a black brush, very soft black brush. Take my flow down and just kind of paint out here where this plane is so that my plane is nice and clear there. So something like that. But yeah, overall, those are the basic steps that I would take to design this book cover. So there you have it. That's how I would recreate that book cover inside of Photoshop. And hopefully through this, you learned some tips, tricks, and techniques that you can use in your own projects. Now, if you enjoyed this style of tutorial where I take a project and just dive in and start figuring out how to do it rather than having all the steps worked out ahead of time, go ahead and leave a comment on that. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this tutorial, please subscribe to my channel, leave a like, share this video. And if you want to learn more about Photoshop and really take your design skills to the next level, check out Nucly.com. I sell professional training for Photoshop and professional tools that you can use in Photoshop. So check that out, Nucly.com. And if you really want to invest in your training, the Nucly Academy is the place to be. If you go to photoshopacademy.com, you'll find out everything about the Nucly Photoshop Academy. All right, here's some other tutorials you can check out, and I will see you next time.